Doesn't look like they're fun.
Welcome to the January 11th meeting of the Rotary Club of South Jacksonville. For our Zoom members, we are happy that you could join us. We see you right there. Please remember to mute yourself and submit any questions via or unmute yourself and ask a question. Thank you to our greeter, Tamara Baker. Okay. And the prayer and pledge today will be given by George Armstrong.
Please join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now let us pray. As we gather today as Rotarians, we pray that we are ever mindful of the opportunities to render service to our fellow citizens, to our community, to our country, and to the world beyond. Keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts and those efforts into those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to protect and preserve our planet and to make the world a better place for all of its inhabitants. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, George. And Christy, our family time, Christy King. Is Christy here today?
Yes, I'm here, President Richard.
Great. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So we'll start with birthdays. Past President Vicki Lynn Kloger celebrated her birthday yesterday on January 10th, and Hal Kelly will celebrate his birthday on January 13th. For member anniversaries, Ron Patrick celebrated 10 years with our club on January 10th, and Julia Kalinsky will celebrate 4 years, and President Richard will celebrate 15 years, both on January 16th. And we don't have any wedding anniversaries this week, so that's it for the family Rotary.
I'd say thank you so much. We have, in terms of announcements, a thank you note from Penny Howell. Some of you may know Penny. She was a teacher at San Jose Elementary and Valencia Elementary for quite a long time before retiring recently. And her thank you note, which I won't read to you, concerns the impact that we as volunteers in those 2 schools under Penny's direction had on her students and on her. The oratory contest, is there an update? Very good.
Just a very quick one. Richard. I want to let everybody know our first regional competition is this Friday, January 14th. It's the Amelia Island Sunrise Club, and it's at the Fernandina Beach Golf Club, and that says 7:30. 7 o'clock. So anybody who's up at sunrise and would like to join, please do. Following that, next week we have Orange Park, and then we have West Jacksonville. So we are off and running.
I say, thank you. We have a member social coming up on January 19th. Lisa Marie, would you like to say? Yeah. Welcome, Lisa Marie.
I mentioned last week, we've got our rest of our Rotary year plan for social events, and we kick it off with the Epping Forest Social. So come bring a guest. We would love to see everyone there. That you are able to now RSVP through DACDB, or just tell Patty on your way out if you and/or a guest will be joining us, so that we can make sure that we've got plenty of food and most importantly, drink for all. So thank you. Look forward to seeing everybody.
Great news. Thank you. To support the Daniel Kids Project and raise money in matching funds to secure the grant, we have chosen a night at the Alhambra Theater. Stephen Jones, let's talk about that for a moment. Welcome, Stephen.
Mr. President. Yeah, this is an opportunity to take advantage of the $3,000 matching district grant from Rotary. So for every $1 we raise, we get $2 of benefit. We thought a night out at the Alhambra would be nice since we've done that in the past. It's going to be Thursday, February 10th at 6 o'clock. The show is Guys and Dolls. I'm told that's a pretty good show. But on each of your tables, there's a sign-up sheet. We're trying to get a bit of a feel for the level of interest in either attending or just donating. Tickets are $80 each. Again, you get dinner and a show, so it's well worth it. You're not obligated in any way if on the sign-up sheet. Again, we're just trying to gauge interest because we do need to tell Alhambra ahead of time, obviously, how many seats we need to reserve. So if you could, before you leave today, if you're interested, please include your name and the number of tickets you might be interested in purchasing, or if you'd rather just make a $50 donation. That way we can figure out how many seats we need. Anyone who's joining us virtually, feel free to email, I guess, either Richard, Patty, myself. Just track us down. Let us know your level of interest and if you'd like to make a donation or get tickets. So anything else? Oh, Rory. Maybe she can talk. Can you talk a little bit about what Daniel is going to be using the funds for?
So the district grant is a $6,000. We're contributing to a larger renovation. The renovation's like $1.3 million at Daniel's Kids, for their renovation of a cottage. It's going to allow them to offer new services to kids with mental health issues. So we're just contributing a small portion to their bigger project that's going to go towards purchasing furniture and therapy equipment. We are going to have some activities with the district grant. February 9th is that date. It will be, I think, around 3 o'clock. It should come out in the gear next week. We are looking for about 15 volunteers. We're going to be doing kickball with the kids, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and then there'll be a tour of the facility so you can see what they're doing. So that'll be coming out, and we need about 15 volunteers.
That portion ends up being a key part of the grant, does it not?
It does. So it requires we're do activities and involved with the project in some way in person.
Thank you.
Yeah.
President-elect Charlie Cofer has an announcement about election of board members, part 2. Let me get out of your way.
Very short 5-minute stand-up meeting of the next year's board immediately following today's meeting. So that would be the holdover members and the new members of the board for 2022-23. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. And now, the moment that you have been waiting for, my explanation of the parking tickets. No, that's not true. Actually, it's the 50-50 drawing with Lori Whitmer. Lori, I'm interrupting your lunch once again. Welcome.
Right. The total cash pot is $130. So if we have a winner today, we will split that. 50 of it going towards the grant, 50 in your pocket. You have 51 cards left in the deck. If you get the opportunity to draw from the deck, you need to draw the ace of spades. So get your tickets out. Number is 556596. I don't think you shook them up.
That's not the number I gave.
All right. Winner in the back.
Next one. Who won? Anyone?
Yeah.
Win?
Come on, Larry, see what you did? Yeah. Ticket.
introduce our visitor and guest today, Michelle Khalil via Zoom. Michelle.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, President Richard. I was telling him yesterday that I am attempting to avoid groups and people right now. I'm leaving on a much anticipated trip tomorrow to Barcelona, so I'm just trying to be extra safe before heading out. So looks like we have a few guests here today. Lisa Marie has a guest.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce, stand up, I'd like to introduce my special guest, Ed Bond. He's with DeJong and LeBay Naval Architects, and he's joined us a couple of times for social and for meetings, and just enjoy having him here, and a friend, a longtime friend of 25+ years. So please welcome Ed Bond.
And Tamara Baker has a guest.
I'd like to introduce my special guest, Chandler Cole. Chandler recently graduated from Florida State with a degree in civil engineering, and he's specializing in structural engineering. So I have the privilege of being his mentor, and welcome to you.
And Dean Scott also has a guest.
Good afternoon, everyone. My guest today is Michael Hood-Telling. He is a real estate appraiser with the firm of Moody Williams. Please welcome Michael.
Welcome to all our guests, and now we'll cue the music.
To introduce our program today, I give you Program Chair Mark Morello.
President Richard, and we are honored to have two guests with us today. I think only one of them's talking, but we're honored to have the other one as well. Assistant State Attorney Matt O'Keefe and Dave Chapman, who is Director of Communications. That's the fancy. That's the fancy. With the State Attorney's Office. Matt's bio would go on for basically his entire speaking time, so I'm not going to do that. I'll try to get the short version. Matt graduated from JU back in the 1980s, 88, I believe, and became a helicopter pilot for the Navy. Did that for many years. Was in Operation Desert Storm and many other deployments. He then went to law school in 98, or graduated in 98 from law school at the University of Florida. Became an assistant state attorney, where he's been a nemesis of Robert Harris's for many years. But he's
That doesn't narrow it down.
it's a long list of people. But he's been assistant state attorney for many, many years. One of his former bosses is on our Zoom call, Mr. Plotkin, and he's accomplished a lot in that capacity. Meanwhile, he also has been in the Naval Reserves, recently retired from the Naval Reserves, but before he did that, accomplished a few things which resulted in him moving up through the ranks, and he became a Rear Admiral. So you can call him Admiral O'Keefe, which is what we normally do. In any event, he's a fascinating man. I'm proud to call him a friend, and he's here to talk to us today about targeted prosecution efforts in the State Attorney's Office. Matt?
Thank you, Ron. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for those kind remarks. On behalf of the State Attorney, Melissa Nelson, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you for a few minutes about one of her initiatives when she came into office in January of 2017. Recognizing that we do have a violent crime problem here in Jacksonville, she took it upon herself to dedicate specific resources in the office. And when I say that, we're talking about senior attorneys, cut them aside, remove them from other divisions, and create what she called targeted prosecution. I'm going to take a few minutes and talk to you about targeted prosecution, who we are, and then really cut to the meat of the chase of why everyone in this room should care. So with that, next slide, please. So there are two sides to the targeted prosecution division in the state attorney's office. I'm the director of what we call the proactive side of targeted prosecution. And I'll explain the background on what that means in a moment. But long story short is Ms. Nelson has dedicated 6 prosecutors, myself, and 5 of the best in the office. I literally handpick my prosecutors to do the work that I'm going to describe to you. I handpick my support staff. And so we have the best of the best supporting this initiative. Next slide, please. So what is the mission of proactive targeted prosecution? You certainly are welcome to read the slide, but I will tell you in a nutshell that we work with our local, state, and federal partners to identify, investigate, and prosecute the very, very small portion of our population that is responsible for a large portion of the violent crime. That's what we do. And when I talk about violent crime, I'm specifically referencing violent gun crime. That is our mindset. That is our mission. That is what we do 24/7, 365. Next slide, please. Our partners, local, state, and federal law enforcement. We will work with anyone who has information to support our mission as described in the previous slide. We work primarily with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and we list the number of units. We go across boundaries. We work in all 3 of our counties. So we also work with Clay County and with Nassau County as well. We work with our state partners if they bring us information in regards to potential targets. And of course, we work with our federal partners. We work very, very closely with the ATF and the DEA, again, in that total comprehensive mission of the bottom line is in reducing violent crime and making our community safer for those who live, work, and visit the 4th Judicial Circuit. We also work very, very closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office. That relationship, there is, you may have heard in other jurisdictions, there may be rice bowl discussions or infighting. That does not occur here in Jacksonville. We're very, very blessed. The leadership at the U.S. Attorney's Office and the leadership at the State Attorney's Office are in absolute lockstep, understanding we have the same goal. We have the same mission, and we work together on a daily basis to achieve that mission. Next slide, please. So our tools. So it says we are focused prosecution, and here's the point of being proactive. We are proactive to a sense. We do not have the ability like the Tom Cruise movie where they can foresee in the future that someone's going to commit a crime and they arrest them in advance. We do not have that ability. What we do in a proactive sense is individuals in the community, again, that very, very small portion of the community responsible for a large portion of the violent crime, they do something. They do something to bring their attention of law enforcement. We call that their behavior of self-selection. And it's primarily their involvement in violent crime. And once they have done that, once they have done something to self-designate them as a target, that's when local, state, and federal law enforcement step in. We, at the very beginning, join them in that mission. Because as we like to say, we work the prosecution from cradle to grave for no other reason to ensure that our law enforcement partners are doing everything by the book, everything legally to avoid, obviously, issues that may present themselves at a later point in the prosecution. So bottom line is we are proactive in a sense. In a sense. Next slide, please. We primarily focus on intelligence gathering, and I could spend hours talking about the resources that we have available to you, but I really want to focus on a couple of them. Did I miss a slide? Can we go back one? Yes, there we go. The Crime Gun Intelligence Center, for those who are not aware, is the intelligence center that actually is located, it's housed in the state attorney's office. That Crime Gun Intelligence Center is a multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency law enforcement gathering point for intelligence. We actually have FBI, ATF, DEA, all embedded in that unit, all with their resources, as well as the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and other local and state partners in that. And that is a resource where we have information sharing, we do data analysis as well, all in the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. And my unit works specifically with the agents and detectives assigned as we're working up cases against those targets that are in our community, primarily facilitating gun violence. We do this, you're way too fast, it is, sorry. We do this using a number of tools, primarily police investigations, electronic surveillance, search warrants, wiretaps, that sort of thing. I do want to touch on one piece that is a unique aspect of what we've been doing. It's called Operation Cooperation. Our targets, when we identify them, obviously they've self-selected, they've done something, they are a focus of violent crime. However, we are willing to work with these individuals if in fact they're willing to work with us. We found one of the greatest tools in our investigation is the cooperation of those individuals who they themselves are in part of the violent crime business. When we're able to enlist their assistance, whereas normally we might be prosecuting them to the fullest extent of the law, we often will provide them an opportunity to cooperate. And in return, provide them an opportunity, if they're willing to turn their lives around, to give them that opportunity. So it's a very unique aspect. Some might say it's a constant hammer. Well, it is a constant hammer, but we do have exceptions to every rule. Because I will tell you, my side of targeted prosecution, we are not in the business of rehabilitation. I'm sorry to say that. And I'm also sorry to say that our targets are getting younger and younger by the day. But there is opportunities for them if they're willing to cooperate, to move forward smartly. If they choose to refuse those opportunities, make no mistake about it, we will do everything on our power to prosecute them with every tool that is available to us. Next slide. There we go. What we do is incredibly data-driven. And I will tell you right now, we are drowning in data resources. As in a number of corporate entities, criminal prosecution is no different. We have the beauty of social media is that it creates a tremendous amount of data. The beauty of social media is that a number of our targets simply can't help themselves. They need to get onto social media and tell their story. Because if they're unable to do that, they're unable to build their street credibility. And they often, that's how they function, by creating this image of themselves, whether it's drug related or money related or violence related. They need to propagate that, they need to disseminate that. And the primary tool is social media. And so we're able to mine that data, but it is extensive because make no mistake about it, our targets, almost without exception, are extensive users of social media. But we mine all of that information. We monitor as much of that information as humanly possible. We then gather that information. And then, of course, we have to process it into a format that is not only usable in an investigation, but more importantly, if we need to go to trial, it's something that we can present in court with the necessary foundations. We spend a tremendous amount of time doing that. One particular tool that does that for us is the Pathfinder tool. Won't bore you with the details of it, but I will tell you it is an extensive program that Ms. Nelson has invested heavily into. It is a computer-based system that literally we can upload tremendous amounts of data into the Pathfinder system, and it will correlate that data for us. Now, we have to give it some guidance. We have to tell it what we're looking for. We have to give it some initial information, but Pathfinder actually has the ability to computer learn. It will build off what we're telling it. It will continue to learn and will ask us questions as we move through the investigation saying, is this what you're looking for? Is this additional information? And it will continue to build and build. It is a tremendous resource. The time-saving aspect of that is unbelievable. Pathfinder can do in hours what would have historically taken us months. But make no mistake, it was a tremendous investment made by Ms. Nelson. It is not cheap. But it is, again, another tool that we are now using moving forward. I also point out we do complex litigation. I specialize, the racketeering and influence corrupt organization statutes that we have in Florida are extremely powerful. They mirror the federal statutes almost word by word. However, we have to earn those charges. They're not given to us. That is clearly complex litigation, but that is a tool that we use because unfortunately, a large portion of the individuals who commit the violent crimes do associate themselves with criminal enterprises. I will tell you, we do have a gang problem here in Jacksonville. It is not your traditional gang problem. Although we do have the presence of sects, of Bloods and Crips and that sort of thing, they are not the real problem. The real problem we have is what we call hybrid street gangs. Generally, geographically, individuals who associate themselves by where they live or potentially where they went to school or might have participated in a youth sports program at a park. They will associate themselves together and propagate criminal crimes amongst themselves. we use the gang RICO statutes to the best of our ability to, again, to prosecute those individuals. We also do a significant amount of drug RICO as well. Make no mistake about it, drugs and violence have a clear nexus. Next slide, please. So I'll tell you about one of the gang RICOs. This is Problem Child Entertainment. This group in and of itself, when I talk about self-selection, they self-selected themselves with the death of Aiden McClendon. If you recall, he was a 20-month-old who was shot and killed in a shootout. He was literally strapped into a car. He was nowhere, obviously wasn't involved. And in fact, his mother was there. She was not involved. But he was, in fact, the victim of violent crime because members of Problem Child Entertainment had an issue with someone who lived at the house where the car was parked where Aiden was sitting in. And they riddled the car he was in, killing him. Those two individuals were part of Problem Child Entertainment. And when that occurred, this organization self-selected itself. It got the attention of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, a number of other law enforcement agencies, and we prosecuted them under the gang RICO statutes. So you say there's 10 individuals on this, and I'll just tell you a little story about this organization. The oldest one was Cynthia Hayes at the time of her arrest. She is 21 years old. I'll repeat that. She was the oldest. Henry Hayes, who was one of the two individuals prosecuted for the death of Aiden McClendon, at the time of that was 17. Henry is Cynthia's younger brother. Cynthia was a mother figure to this organization. And I will share with you my Matt O'Keefe's personal sense on life is we do have a violent crime problem. We're doing our best, but we can't police our way out of it. The story of Problem Child Entertainment is a classic story of some of the issues that we have here in Jacksonville and we have across the country. Young group of individuals struggling, whether it's economics, education, whatever the case may be. They look for the familiar relationship that they were able to create in Problem Child Entertainment. These people were like family. And they committed crimes like family. And unfortunately, there were violent crimes and the result of a number of people being murdered. Long story short, they were all 10 prosecuted. All 10 at some point in time pled guilty. All 10 are in Florida State Prison, except for 2. And one of them is Cynthia Hayes. And I reference Operation Cooperation. The gang RICO statutes, for not familiar, are first-degree felonies, but they're punishable by up to 30 years of Florida State Prison. And like as I mentioned, 8 out of 10 went to Florida State Prison. We gave Cynthia the opportunity to cooperate. She took that opportunity. And she was an amazing cooperator. In fact, not only did she help us in the investigation of Problem Child Entertainment, she was able to get a number of her co-defendants to also cooperate once she started talking. Because they realized if since talking to the police and talking to the state attorney's office, they know what's going on. And we did. And as a result of her cooperation, a domino effect occurred, and a number of the other individuals also cooperated and also got a benefit of that cooperation. But again, it was about an 18-month investigation that led to the prosecution of these 10 defendants. Next slide, please. We do wiretaps. Won't bore you with the detail. We do some wiretaps. They got to be signed by the boss. These are very, very difficult to get. We don't do them in all of our prosecutions, but again, it is a tool that we use when it is appropriate. Next. And I've already talked a little bit about electronic evidence. It is just out there. It's voluminous, and we do everything in our power to gather every iota, every bit of metadata that we can on these individuals in any way, shape, or form. I share there are 3 focuses. Again, the details are not appropriate, are not important at this point in time. But I will tell you, we start from beginning to end understanding that at some point in time, we want to be able to pull this data out and present it before a court with the legal foundation necessary and the relevance established already. We don't pull stuff out thinking, well, we may not be able to use that in the future. There's no value to that to us. So we are very, very cautious in how we operate, especially the world of electronic data is changing. The legal world is changing every minute. The case law has probably changed since I started giving this presentation 15 minutes ago. Next slide. Oh. Malfunction. I'm nowhere near that keyboard, so it's not me. And then we also talked about presenting it in the trial. Next slide, please. So there's another side to targeted prosecution. It's the reactive side. That is Director Mark Khalil is in charge in that. So once the proactive side got up and running, the boss realized that hey, we still need to gather our best and brightest in our prosecutors together, put them in targeted prosecution on the reactive side, and they handle all the bullet to bone shootings. So we have incidents, individuals who have no prior history that's in our world. They didn't self-select themselves prior to the Violent Crime Act for which they're being prosecuted. And as a result, reactive targeted prosecution handles those types of cases. So they investigate those crimes after the shooting has occurred. That's the mission of reactive side. And the point of the next slide, go ahead, Dave, is that again, 8 prosecutors, another large portion of our office being dedicated, resources being dedicated to tackle the crime of violent, tackle the issue of violent crime. Next slide, please. They have the same partners. They have the same partners. They operate from arrest to prosecution to conviction to sentencing. So they're just not quite on the front end as my side is, but again, work very, very closely with all the same prosecutors and law enforcement agencies that we discussed earlier. Next slide, please. Talks about the criteria for that side. Bottom line is you utilize a firearm in a violent crime, it is eligible for prosecution and targeted prosecution. And as I mentioned, we have the best prosecutors. These are not junior prosecutors, these are senior trial savvy, trial experienced prosecutors handling these cases. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about now is ShotSpotter. And this is one of the tools that in coordination with our law enforcement partners that we use. If we're not familiar, ShotSpotter is a triangulation system. It's used across the country. Here in Jacksonville, if you recognize the map of Jacksonville that I have there, there's actually a red line that you see, a red circular kind of looks like a kidney bean. That's the area in Jacksonville in which ShotSpotter has been installed. It's a large portion of Zone 5. It's the top of Zone 1 for the police zones. For those, it's the 32209 and 32208 zip codes. Now you may ask yourself, well, why is it just in that area? Well, for 2 reasons. One, ShotSpotter is very expensive. As I said, it's a series of microphones, physical microphones located throughout that target area, which have the ability to capture sounds and then triangulate off those sounds to make a determination of where the sound is coming from. The reason it's in those areas is because historical data has shown that a large portion of our shootings and homicides occur in that area. The sad part of the story is why it's also there is that's also a large portion area where we have a significant amount of shootings and people just don't call the police. So the function of ShotSpotter is when the triangulation system is activated, primarily by gunfire, the system activates, it starts listening and recording and triangulates those sounds. And the listening resources are so close together, they triangulate, they cross points, and the system is able to determine the location from where those sounds come from. It then tells dispatch for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, hey, we've had what appears to be shots fired at this location. And JSO will automatically dispatch a patrol vehicle to that location. No police need to be called, because I mentioned earlier, 9 times out of 10, they weren't being called. What this has done is allowed police to arrive on scene faster. They're able to contact witnesses faster, locate victims faster, and on a side note, save lives, but also recover physical evidence in those cases where shell casings and that sort of thing may exist. So, do you think this is an issue? Yes, because the ShotSpotter here, I don't recall when this was actually taken from, but you can see all the ShotSpotter locations that were in that, and that's the small little dots they're showing, that's how it's represented on the system. But I want to give you an example of what ShotSpotter captures. So next slide, please. So that is literally 2 examples of ShotSpotter in our area. And I will tell you, although the presentation has some data, just for bringing you up to date, ShotSpotter activations as of year to date in 2022, again, have been 108 ShotSpotter activations in 2022 in that area. So long story short is the system is still very, very much in use as we speak today. Next slide, please. These are the numbers for 2024. total activations across, again, that very, very small portion of the city over the entire year. And I will tell you, the 2021 numbers are going to be slightly higher. I don't have the final figures. I apologize for that. They're just going to be slightly higher. Not much, but slightly higher. Next slide, please. Oh, stop. Go back. Sorry. So the last video I'd like to show you. We're gonna get piled. So this is a ring video of a case, and I will direct your attention, if you can, you can't see now, to the corner up here. So this is actually across the street. This is a neighbor where the neighborhood is inconsequential. I will tell you, it's not your neighborhood embedded on the north side where you might think this has occurred. But again, this is what we're dealing with in Jacksonville today. So if you want to hit play, just kind of direct your attention. The house those individuals targeted was the house where the mother of a rival gang member lived, the mother and family. At the time of the shooting, mom was at the house. There were two younger children. Don't quote me on their ages, but I know they were both below the age of 10. And fortunately, the individuals who shot up the house didn't know where they were or who they were shooting at, because the only casualty inside the house was the refrigerator. The refrigerator took a number of rounds and was put out of commission. But that is only by the grace of God. Because unfortunately, the violent crime is a back and forth situation that we have right now. And what that means is we have Group A and Group B. They're beefing for some particular reason. Group A on social media says, you wear funny clothes. Group B doesn't like it. They say, yeah, you're ugly. They start going back and forth, and eventually it's come, well, the next time I see you on the street, you better have a gun because I'm going to have a gun. And it kind of goes from there. I will tell you, I'm old. When I was young, people used to fight, fist fights. I won't tell you if I ever got in one. Some I won, some I lost. People generally just don't fist fight. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm saying it just immediately goes to violent crime. And I think that's just a mindset of the younger people that unfortunately, again, small portion of the population that I deal with. That's what I've seen from my humble experience. So next slide. But why should you care? As we're all well aware, there was a distinct rise in homicides. 2017, 18, spike in 19, and 2020 was an absolute disaster. Our mantra is one homicide is one too many. Our goal is literally 0 homicides. And most people look at me and say, Matt, that is unattainable. And I tell you, well, then what should the goal be? Should it be 10? Because if it's 10, then there's 10 families whose lives are changed forever. Is it 5? Is it 1? It has to be 0. That is our goal. And anything less is unsatisfactory. We are trending in the right direction, but we are nowhere near where we need to be. They're down about 30% last year. Tremendous work by our law enforcement partners. Tremendous work. But again, nowhere where we need to be. And if you track the data across the country with violent crime, it's what happened in Jacksonville is an aberration. Violent crime across the country has been up exponentially. And whether that's a function of the economics or the pandemic, I don't know. I'm not a social scientist in those areas. But I will tell you that local, state, and federal law enforcement partners, along with state attorney's office and U.S. attorney's office, has dedicated tremendous resources, and we are committed to the goal of 0 homicides. So with that, questions for me? Yes, sir.
Do those homicide numbers reflect domestic violence also, or that's
So,
non-related
yes.
parties?
Yes, they do. So homicide numbers, the number, by default, a homicide is a death by other than natural causes. That's the homicide numbers. It includes domestic violence cases. It includes, obviously, those aren't all shooting type. Includes all of them. Now, a murder is a criminal act that results in the death of others. So, the murder numbers are dramatically lower than all homicide, not, so every murder is a homicide, not, every homicide is not a murder. So. It
Are
does
they able
include
to
all.
break them out at all though between?
They absolutely are. I have
non-related
those
and-
numbers. They absolutely
Are they
are.
trending similarly, do you know, or
They're about 30% down as well for non-domestics.
non-domestic down?
Yeah, as well, yes.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, sir.
I'm a lifelong resident of Jacksonville, born and reared here. I've always had respect for the law, the courts, etc. I did appear before Judge Gooding a couple of times. Driving violations that I'm sure I was, anyway, I was not at fault, but the thing I wonder about today, though, is that when you look at the TV, news media, what have you, and you look at what's going on in places like Portland and San Francisco, and Minneapolis, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're fortunate, at least from my perspective, we're fortunate that we've got a good number of people in Jacksonville, the Duval County area, that seem to have their heads screwed on straight, including your operation. What is it about these other places that causes people, attorneys, et cetera, to think the way they do? I mean, what is it? Because I don't understand it.
Sir, I've been in Jacksonville since 1984, so I consider myself native here. And for me to stand here and try and interpret what would in other areas of the country, I'm just not in a position to do that. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you just said, but you're asking for why. I don't have any idea. Because all I can do is look at the data trends. And although I'm not familiar with the data trends in Portland, there are several other cities that are similarly situated where their violent crime statistics are going through the roof. Now, whether that's pandemic driven, don't know. But I will tell you what they're doing does not appear from the data to be working. But I can't answer your question as to why they're doing what they're doing. Yes, sir.
Matt, can you give us, you talked about that Pathfinder program. Can you give us a specific example of how you use that program, what it does for you?
We can. So I don't ex parte anyone. I will just tell you, we have a case, a homicide case, where there are 4 suspects in this homicide case. And they all have cell phones, of course, because no one doesn't have a cell phone. And in fact, 2 of the 4 have 2 cell phones. So we have 6 total cell phones. We're able to post search warrant, download the data of those cell phones. And out of that data, whether it's text message, calls, because people don't call anymore, by the way, it's all text message or that sort of thing. Text message, video chats, chat functions, photographs, metadata on photographs. We're able to download all that data from those 6 phones. And Pathfinder, we tell Pathfinder, we now know the numbers. We want to know how many times were these phones calling each other, first and foremost. Next, we want to know, were these phone numbers, these 6 phones, were they calling anybody else? Is there a common phone number that they were calling? So can we correlate, because maybe there's someone else out there that we, not one of the 4 that we arrested, someone else we need to go contact. They may not be involved, but they may have information, they may be a witness, something else. So Pathfinder was able to correlate those 6 phones, show how many times the 4 people called each other on those phones, and more importantly, when they called, and the content of that communication, whether it's text message, and correlated it all chronologically. And strangely enough, as you put all this together, and Pathfinder has the ability to graphically display this, that's a really cool pictures from Pathfinder. I mean, we could graphically or circularly, have little cones, all sorts of other amazing stuff. Put it all together, and you can literally see, in this particular case, the crime being planned, the crime being executed, some of the mistakes that they made, the crime itself, because strangely enough, there's a period of time where there's no communication. Just tons of communication, tons and tons. Quiet, homicide, tons and tons of communication afterwards. All by downloading this information in Pathfinder, by us telling it what we're looking for, was able to correlate this information. And then, oh, by the way, we said, hey, we're looking for guns, pictures of guns, that sort of thing. Pathfinder will go through videos. And even if the video starts with a pair of tennis shoes, or if there's a gun in that video, Pathfinder will search and say, hey, is this the gun you're looking for? And a single, obviously, because a videotape is obviously a series of still photos put together really, really fast. But Pathfinder will do all of that. And it was able to pull pictures of guns. And we were able to correlate, well, obviously, the physical scene, there were shell casings. Does that shell casing match the type of gun that one of those suspects was holding? And the answer to that was yes. So long story short is Pathfinder was able to do that. It took us about 2 days to upload the information into Pathfinder. It takes a while. But Pathfinder was able to churn that out in probably 72 hours, that information. Now, once we had it, we're like, oh, okay, where do we go from here? Okay. But that initial correlation took about 72 hours, and that's something that would take months and months and months to do if you're talking about sending it to a crime analyst and having it down. So, yes, sir.
So I know you showed statistics, 2020, the number of homicides was up significantly. Do you have numbers, during the pandemic on, people buying guns or people going out and getting concealed weapons permits? I mean, did that increase significantly? I know you go to buy ammunition, it's almost triple what it was 2 years ago.
So I do know, and I don't know the specific figures, but because we do work with ATF, I can state with confidence that during the pandemic, the number of legal sales of firearms in Duval County went up. I can't give you a percentage. I know it went up. I can't say dramatically or significantly. I know it was higher. I don't know the numbers in regards to that. I will tell you that another trend that working with our federal partners I can speak to, it's called straw purchasing. It's where someone who has the ability to legally purchase a weapon does so and then turns the weapon over to someone who can't. A prohibited person, such as in the state of Florida, if you've been convicted of a felony, you cannot purchase a firearm. So the number of straw purchases being made, again, investigated by ATF because the state does not have a straw purchase crime. It's a federal crime only. Those numbers of straw purchase prosecutions did also go up in 2020 and in 2021. So more people were out there buying guns and legally purchasing them when they're entitled to, but turning those guns over to other individuals.
How are you able to track that? Because from
How are we able to prosecute that type of case?
Well, the straw purchase, how are you being able to track those?
So normally what ends up happening is an individual who is a prohibited person is found in possession of the firearm. He's done something, whatever happened, he's come in contact with law enforcement, he's found in possession. We can then do a trace. ATF just traces on the firearms, and we determine that that firearm was actually purchased by that individual's wife or girlfriend or mother or something, and that's how they're able to determine. There's other ways. I mean, there are proactive investigations, as I'm sure we're all aware. Every gun store here in Jacksonville and probably across the country have excellent video systems. Excellent. Crystal clear, man, it's beautiful. And you'll see prohibited person and non-prohibited person shopping for guns together. Non-prohibited person purchases gun and then literally turns it over. I mean, as they're walking out of the store, gives a gun. Okay, here's, Merry Christmas. So we also, proactively, they've been able to investigate those cases. Yes, sir.
The folks that cooperate with you, are they giving you any insight into the why?
Yes.
So what are some of the in-depth reasons that, just beyond sort of the big picture of economics or education or and feelings get hurt or whatever? What's the sort of the next level of detail?
So I'm not, the why is, so let me answer, I'll answer a question as to why would anyone participate in a criminal enterprise? The why isn't behind violent crime, and I need to have somebody up here with a PhD to describe that to you. But I can tell you the why people, especially these hybrid organizations, it really starts when they don't have a proper socioeconomic structure at home. I found that with the PCE organization. I know those individuals intimately. That was my case. And I will tell you, Cynthia Hayes served as a motherly role model, and she was a good mother to them. They had a place to sleep and eat if they needed to. They went to her because they didn't have any other options. They didn't have any economic options, so okay, well, you start selling drugs, you steal cars, you rob people, that sort of thing. And then it just kind of snowballs. I think there's a lot of them. I know a lot of folks out there that just don't have any other options. Wish they did. Again, that's just not, you can't police our way out of this problem. All I can tell you is by the time they get into those dire straits and they become a part of my radar, as I mentioned, I'm not in the business of rehabilitation. But I think that's, yeah, it's a simple answer. I apologize, I don't have more in depth, but I really think that's the hard. I don't think there's anybody, I mean, unless they got a mental health issue or just predicated to doing that behavior from birth. Just don't. Could be wrong. And Mr. Cohen, you might, I don't know if you.
I don't have any answers.
And make no mistake, that's not an answer. I don't have answers either. I just don't, I don't know the why. I mean, Cynthia Hayes told us exactly why she did it. She did it for her brothers. I mean, one of the other individuals is the father of her 2 children. Okay. And to Cynthia Hayes' credit, I mean, she was taking care of 2 kids and all those other people at the same time. She just got herself in a bad way. Yes, sir.
What's the youngest age level that you typically see kids starting to really get in trouble?
Get in trouble?
Yeah.
12, 13, 14. Now that's trouble. I mean, I'm talking about, I don't prosecute juveniles, but I see their juvenile history when they get to me. And so generally 12, 13, 14. I mean, the youngest target, this individual remained in juvenile court, even though it was a violent crime use of a firearm, was 14. So, I mean, that's a 14-year-old using a firearm. As an adult, but again, I understand the metaphysics behind the development of the brain and that sort of thing. But 14 years old, and that's our biggest challenge right now. Our targets keep getting younger and younger. Whereas I might pull over, well, law enforcement will pull over a group of individuals who are going to do something nefarious and have firearms en masse. 5, 10 years ago, they were probably 18 to 21. Now they're 16 to 18. Why is the 14-year-old driving? Because they're the only one that knows how. And the rest don't have driver's license there. Because he's the best driver. He's 14. Okay, I don't care. Back to left. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I skipped over you.
No, that's good. I was just wondering if, I know this doesn't happen, but in the event that somebody in law enforcement ended up, turn out to be a bad apple, would your office have a conflict of interest in prosecuting?
Well, it would depend on what the agency is, I'll be honest with you. There's a protocol in place that, in fact, there's a protocol in place that if it is, do we prosecute members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office? Yes. There's also a protocol in place that if Ms. Nelson makes a determination that there is a conflict, she simply offers it back to the governor for a governor's reassignment. But we absolutely do. And sadly, I think you made a statement that law enforcement doesn't get trouble. They do. They absolutely do. I mean, I was here 20 years ago when we had 2 members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office tried and convicted of murder. 99.9% of members of law enforcement across the board are absolutely the best of the best doing it for the right reason. And it's a 0.01% of the population that ruins it for everybody else. And personally, I want them more than I want anybody out on the street committing crime. I do. Because it makes my life exponentially harder when I have someone who had the public trust in their hands and they violate it. Very, very offensive. And I apologize for any emotional tone, but that bothers me a lot. Yes, ma'am.
So I was a prosecutor for 13 years. Mark Willow was my supervisor at one point. I went against Charlie Cooper. And I handled complex crimes, special cross. You said, we're not going to police our way out of this. And you're right. You have to identify children in the school system in advance who are coming out of those homes that have no support. The state attorney's office or the school system or any other programs identify these kids and do some kind of interaction in advance.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a school outreach program that was absolutely gutted by COVID.
How was it gutted by COVID?
We couldn't get back into the schools for understandable reasons. So we do have an outreach. I'm assigned to Sandalwood High School. Look forward to getting back into, but we just have no opportunities at this point in time. So every high school, I believe, every high school, grade school, middle school has a dedicated assistant state attorney assigned to liaison. I liaison with the vice principal. I think it's still the same guy. I hope it is. But long story short, so we have that relationship, and the first opportunity that we have to get back into the schools and speak to the kids, whether it's, you know, stay out of jail, or let me give you a speech on, hey, join the military, we will do it because there's absolutely a need for that, and we do our best. But as I mentioned, it's just very, very difficult right now.
Who makes that decision?
Sir,
Who makes that decision?
about getting back into schools? Somewhere, probably, I'm on the fourth floor of the state attorney's office. There's the fifth floor is where all the big offices are. I would have to defer to make the fifth floor makes those decisions. And in coordination, I'm sure, with public health and they do all kind of public schools a whole bit. So, okay, I think I'm getting the hook. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again.
Thank you for sharing your insights and experience today. My word. As a token of our appreciation, we are making a small donation to the Rotary Foundation for the eradication of polio, and we have a certificate for you that says so.
Great, thank
There
you
you
very
are.
much. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Couple of reminders. Next week, our speaker will be, please join me in crossing fingers, if he gets well, Mark Harris, who was supposed to be here last time. And we're still looking forward to hearing from him. As we end our meeting, we remember our membership motto: service above self, one profits most to serve the best. Each one bring one. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.